Over the last year, 4 million babies received life-saving screenings due to March of Dimes' work.
And 19 million women were reached through our program, education, and resources.
More than 150 state legislative bills were passed to advocate for the health of moms and babies.
Critical research investments began uncovering the impact of COVID-19 to their health.
And 2,000 moms were served through mobile health units.
To give access to care to uninsured families.
To make this happen each year, it takes a mother of a movement.
A mother of a movement.
A mother of a movement.
But we need your help.
We need to end preventable preterm birth.
We need to end preventable preterm health risks and deaths.
And we need to fight for health equity.
Each year, 1 in 10 babies is born too soon.
Did you know that every 12 hours, a woman dies here in America from complications from pregnancy?
And 60% of these deaths are preventable.
And it's even worse for women of color, who are up to 50% more likely to have a baby born too soon.
And whose children face up to a 130% higher infant death rate.
We can't give up on moms and babies. That's why March of Dimes this year has a bold new vision.
Our annual walks in communities around the country are now virtual.
So no matter where you are, you can join the movement for change.
And ensure that every mom and baby is healthy.
Mask up, take a stand for families, and get moving to raise critical funds.
Visit marchforbabies.org.
Take action to rally with millions of Americans to transform the health of all moms and babies.
Together, let's be a part of something big.
March for Babies, a mother of a movement.
I apologize, I was on mute. So thank you so much for joining us today. I wanted to start by wishing all of our panelists and our guests a very happy Mother's Day. The March of Dimes helps moms through all aspects of pregnancy and during difficult times related to childbirth, such as premature birth and loss. I invite you to view our website, learn more about how we help moms, babies, and healthcare providers through our research, advocacy, education, and support. I'd also like to thank NSU for hosting our event today. And if any of you have questions, please use the Q&A feature and we'll get to as many of those as we can. And also feel free to use the chat feature to make any comments. We are so happy to bring to you these amazing powerhouse women that you're about to meet and have the opportunity to learn tricks, tips, and shortcuts to having your powerhouse career. I'm going to turn it over to Rhonda Ritchie, the Senior Director of Advancement at NSU Art Museum in Fort Lauderdale. Prior to joining the museum, she was in charge of community partnerships, donor relations, and special events at NSU. She spent 2 decades running her own production company, and she is the proud mom of an 18-year-old son. She loves being very involved with the community. She's the past president and board member of Royal Danes of Cancer Research, among other activities. Fun facts: her first career was a professional actress and singer. So take it, Rhonda.
Thank you, Stacy. Yes, that professional actress and singer training has helped me a lot in the corporate world too. All right, it's my pleasure to be here, and we've got a lot to cover, so I'm going to jump right in. I'd like to first introduce you to all our just amazing rock star panelists. They're women of great accomplishment. I'll start with Dr. Farzana Hafizullah. So let me tell you a little bit about her. Dr. Farzana Hafizullah is an internal medicine physician and chair of the Department of Internal Medicine at NSU's Dr. Kiran C. Patel College of Osteopathic Medicine. She's also a founding team member and former assistant dean for community and global health at NSU MD. She is a past national president of the American Medical Women's Association and is an author of 2 work-life balance books, Lead with Your Heart and Harmony of the Spheres. In addition, she leads several health equity projects inclusive of the Caribbean Diaspora Initiatives and in projects that address racial ethnicity disparities during the COVID-19 pandemic. Her team's work is published in peer-reviewed, high-impact journals. She also hosts the on-camera Oncology Practice Update series for Elsevier and films public service messages with Mission Critical Health. She received a Woman of the Decade Award from the Women's Economic Forum in India and was recognized as the most outstanding advocate for integrated community care in the world in 2017 at a ceremony in London, England. She's a proud mother of 4, 3 daughters and 1 son, and is married for 24 years to Dr. Jason Hafizullah. So applause for Dr. Hafizullah. Next, we have a passionate and respected leader, Heather Haverchak. Heather serves as Chief Executive Officer at Broward Health Medical Center, Salah Foundation Children's Hospital. Ms. Haverchak is responsible for the overall strategy and operations of the 716-bed acute care hospital, where she's held various management positions for the past 16 years. Before being appointed in August 2019, Ms. Haverchak served as the hospital's interim chief executive officer. She's also held positions as chief operating officer, associate vice president of strategic and administrative services, regional director of the hospital's strategic service lines, and nurse manager of the Pediatric Oncology and Sickle Cell Transition Program and Pediatric Palliative Care. Ms. Haverchak began her career as a registered nurse in pediatric hematology, oncology, and bone marrow transplant at Miami Children's Hospital in 2002. She serves on numerous nonprofit community organization boards, including South Florida chapter of the American Heart Association and Greater Fort Lauderdale Chamber of Commerce. She's serving as this year's Go Red for Women chair. Ms. Haverchak is the immediate past chair of Gilda's Club South Florida and has also been the recipient of a variety of awards that include South Florida Business Journal's Power Leaders in Healthcare for 2019 and 2020. In March of 2021, she was recognized as one of 6 women to be named Broward's Trailblazer. Heather Haverchak is married to Scott, and they have 2 children, Owen, 12, and Nora, 11. Next, Dr. Sharetta Ramiki is native of Broward County, Florida. She holds a Bachelor's of Science degree, a Master's of Business Administration, and a doctorate degree in education. Dr. Ramiki's dissertation explored pregnancy or infant loss of African-American women in Broward County. Her research focuses on African-American women's perspective during their pregnancy experiences. Dr. Sharetta Ramiki has used her various professional roles and community activism to tackle the issue of health equity as a social justice issue. Her pursuit for equity fuels her journey as a national trainer, speaker, and subject matter expert on the topics of race, diversity, and women's issues. She's been instrumental in leading the conversation of health disparity amongst underrepresented groups. Her work has led to providing preventative services to at-risk pregnant women and infants in order to reduce infant deaths, as well as addressing racial gaps in public and maternal health sectors. Dr. Ramiki was inducted into the Broward County Women's Hall of Fame in 2016 and is a member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. Last, but certainly not least on our panel, Maria Maldonado Smith lives in the uncomfortable, a full-time working mom of 3 with a thriving marriage. Maria is currently an account executive with GM Financial. Born and raised in Lexington, Kentucky, she's a graduate of the University of Kentucky, Go Cats, with degrees in vocal performance, political science, and psychology. She's spent the past 15 plus years in the corporate space, leading teams to success and finding personal success as well. Her blog, get ready for this, Confessions of a Corporate Mom Managing Motherhood, Maniacs, and Marriage, is the result of years of working in the corporate space and needing a therapeutic outlet to the craziness that oftentimes engulfs her life. The blog is also a space where working moms can come together in support and solidarity to connect, collaborate, and share their journey of working motherhood. All right, what an impressive group we have, ladies. I'm proud to be a part of this. We have a lot we want to dig into, so I would like to just jump into questions and get started right away. All right. First, each of you have obviously achieved impressive accomplishments in your lives and careers. I know that for most of us, this has not come easy. Can you share your most significant early career challenges and how you might handle those differently at this stage of your career? What are some of the lessons? Let's begin with Dr. Hapazula. Your career in the medical field is filled with unique challenges. What were some of the early obstacles and how did you approach and conquer them?
Well, thank you for that great question, Rhonda. And first, it's wonderful to be here. Thank you to Stacy, our NSU family, for putting this all together. So in the medical field, my goodness, not to date myself too much, but many decades ago is when I was in medical school. And, you know, my husband and I were actually training together from then on. And one of the first challenges that I faced was being a mom. And that was the first of my 4 children. I actually got pregnant in medical school, not planned, but it happened. And I actually was one of the moms with preterm labor. And at that time, women were very much a minority in medicine. There were no accommodations. No one understood, you know, what motherhood would be like in medicine. And in fact, there was a bit of a motherhood penalty that was enacted during that time. You were almost seen or perceived as someone who really didn't have the knowledge base, or that you always would have an excuse to not be able to get the job done. So experiencing that early on, I recognized I really needed to rework the way I was proceeding with not only medical education, but also in the training process. So I'll give you a quick example. On my surgical rotation, when I was about six plus months pregnant, and with a very big, you know, belly in front of me, navigating through the trauma surgery wards, et cetera, and navigating through the trauma surgery units where we were taking care of patients with gunshot wounds. And me as a medical student, my role was to do the femoral stick, put in a Foley catheter, and do a rectal exam on the patients with a very big belly in front of me and a patient with flailing legs. So I learned very quickly to twist myself in a nice fashion to get my belly out of the way to still get the job done. And then if we had to round early in the morning, while we were rounding at 6 a.m. in the morning, I was there at 4 a.m. in the morning to make sure that I understood all the nuances of my patient cases, because I got disproportionately more questions than my male colleagues on rounds. They really wanted to see and test if I did have that knowledge base and if I was competent enough to continue on in that patient case, but I was always ready. And during the surgeries where I stood for many long hours while I was pregnant, I made sure I filled my lab coat pockets with little healthy snacks and other books, you know, to kind of read in between. And it was a very, very challenging time, but I managed to get through it. Now today, if I look back on it, I wouldn't change a thing, because all of those experiences really fired me up to become an advocate for women in medicine and to really level the playing field. I'm happy to say that women are now in the majority as far as matriculants to medical school. We do still have a lot of work to do, though, when it comes to the attrition of women as you ascend a little bit higher in the leadership circles. And now, of course, many medical schools not only make accommodations for women in medicine who are pregnant or in the training process, but now we're able to strike more of a balance because the conversations are now being converted into action.
That is fascinating, Dr. Hafizullah. I love hearing those stories and the great visuals that go with it. It's really impressive on how you overcame and rose to your performance level. Dr. Ramiki, I would love to hear your thoughts on this. What were some of your early challenges, and maybe how would you respond differently at this point in your life?
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and glad to be here as well with this great panel. One of the things I think, Rhonda, when people hear about my bio or my accomplishments, they seem to be impressed or even, amazed at some of the achievements that I've been able to accomplish. And, although I'm proud of those accomplishments, there are some things which bring me greater accomplishments and fulfillment. And those are the things that you don't see on my resume or in my bio. And those things are those challenges which you're talking about, because those are very key. And they are really key in helping us help me develop with who I am. It's at the point of being challenged in which I had to look at which way to turn. I had to make a decision. I kind of reverted to that famous poem by Robert Frost entitled, The Road Not Taken, and where the person is standing in the woods in front of a tree and in front of a road that's split, and they have to decide which way to go. So every time I got a challenge or a perceived challenge I was experiencing, I was at I always say that's that fork in the road situation, and I had to decide which way to turn. So let me just give you one example. I was working with an organization. I've done nonprofit all of my career and all of it in Broward County. And I was at this organization for about 10 years where I was operating in my passion of helping moms and babies, what I'm doing today. However, I had outgrown that, the kind of responsibilities which I had at that organization. I had received my MBA where I was there, and there really was no room for advancement. So when an opportunity came for me to go to another organization, but it would require me to operate outside of my passion, and it paid me more money, I jumped. I was a young mom, I jumped. More money, I was like, wow, this is great. But after being at that company for only 9 months, and I look back at this and I laugh because that's the same amount of gestation time we have when we're birthing babies. So after being at that company 9 months, they went through some reorganization and I was let go. So I left a 10-year position, jumped into this position of 9 months, and then I was let go. So I was at that fork in the road situation. And I had to decide, do I sit around and I be bitter? Because I'm like, you guys had me come over here, leave a job that I had some stability working in my passion. Do I play the victim, like poor me, you got me in this situation? Or do I bounce up? And I created, so what I did bounce up. I created opportunities for myself. And when that time of unemployment. So people see a time of unemployment as being destitute, but I saw a time as an opportunity for development. During that time of unemployment, I engaged in several volunteer ventures. I volunteered at a teen parent school. I was able to get more involved in the community, because what I realized though, even though that challenge came where I was now unemployed because of this decision I made, I still had all my geniuses. Those things, my knowledge, my resources, my experiences. So I made my responsibility during that time to use those geniuses every day to serve others. So the lesson I would say that I learned is that there is always room for growth wherever you're planted. It doesn't matter if you're in a job, wherever it is, you can grow. And you have to stay connected to the root cause of your reason for doing what you're doing. I had left that when I took that other job. I left caring for moms and babies to do something else. But the key takeaway is that I no longer let money be my motivator.
Awesome. You lead with passion and you follow the passion. And then it's not like work, right? When you choose a job that you're passionate about, it doesn't feel like work. Exactly. How about Ms. Haverchik? Talk to me about your perspective in this and share it with our audience.
Sure. So as I started to really jump into the administrative track and leadership track, I at the same time was starting a family. My first son, Owen, was not planned, so that was a little bit unexpected. And I think as I look back on things earlier on in my career, it was very easy to just, jump in there for those opportunities, volunteer for things, always take kind of that assignment that you get that you're a little bit scared of, you're a little uneasy with it. And I always just enjoyed doing those things. That was really the sweet spot. That's the spot where you had the opportunity to grow. And sometimes you would fail at that. But as I started to become a mom and I had my kids really back to back, and I was in leadership positions, I would say that sometimes I put an unreasonable amount of expectations on myself. I thought that this work-life balance piece had to be in exact proportions every single day. So I remember just being very stressed, and I remember people thinking, well, she's young, she has young children, we're not sure she's going to be able to take that next promotion or have the time to associate it with it. So I think I put a lot of undue pressure on myself. And looking back at it now and really understanding all of that balance and understanding that sometimes those small things aren't as important as they seem back then, those don't have to be equal buckets all the time, and you figure out what that balance looks like. But I too, like the others, really just wanted to be accelerating at all times. So I was really fortunate to be able to reflect on those things, and I surrounded myself with people who had been on that journey already and were able to share their knowledge with me. And I think that has helped me tremendously.
Thank you. That's great. Great to hear. And for everybody's honesty about those challenges and that stress you put on yourself. I think everybody's felt that. Mrs. Smith, how about you? What are some of the lessons you learned from some of your early career hurdles or experience?
Yeah. So, and first of all, too, thank you so much for hosting this, Stacy from March of Dimes, NSU. Appreciate and privileged, the honor to be here. The three things that stick out to me as just life lessons that I learned throughout my career would be, and starting a family, because I was a young mother starting my career, but I chose both at the same time. And the reason was because just something to learn about me, just personally, is that the way to get me to perform the best is to tell me that I can't do something. And so it was suggested that I wait to start a family and spend 2 to 5 years developing my career before I started a family. That advice to me was given to me by a man. And so I ignored that and decided to go ahead and start a family whenever I darn well pleased. So I took a position with a pharmaceutical company and dove right in, while simultaneously building out my family. And the three things that really stick out to me when I reflect on that is to be your own advocate, to ask for help, and to give yourself grace. I think those are the three things that in any lifespan of, whether that's a new job, a new baby, you're a move, any type of transition in life, they're just three things that really stick out to me that kind of become almost a theme that have guided me, because I was a young mom and very much like Heather, put a lot of undue expectations and stress on myself because I'm extremely driven and ambitious. So my goal was to be as good of a mother as I was at work, but to never let either suffer. And unfortunately, when you're a new mom, especially as a new mom, and then when you add more children to the mix, the balance is something that we all strive for, but it's just not achievable or attainable. And I think learning that firsthand and accepting that that's okay, that there's going to be a time for family, there's going to be a time for work, but for both of them to be running at the same capacity at all times is just unfortunately not achievable. And I know that we all wish that we could operate that way, but it's just not not possible. So I learned that through trial and error. Honestly, I wish I could say that, you know, I was bold in my decision to start a family and that I just nailed it and crushed everything, but I didn't. I failed miserably along the way. and sometimes my career won for a span of several years as I was working through promotions and really pushing through to reach that next level. I sacrificed my family for my career. And then, you know, I think you get that wake up call where you kind of look back and think, well, you know, what are you doing? Because I'm building this family, and my family is my legacy. That's my life. That's what's going to supersede anything that I do in this world. So I think learning to advocate for yourself early on, learning to ask for help and not try to do it all. And then also just giving yourself that grace to know that, you know what, there's a time and a place for everything. And that's why we have seasons of life. And so when you're starting out in your career and as you're building a family, those are both seasons that are going to be a little bit tougher on you than normal.
And I try to tell people that, you know, that report to me and that I'm trying to mentor along young professional women. I always try to remind them, you learn more from the mistakes than you learn from getting things right. You know, you really do. So forgive yourself for those mistakes, brush it off and move on.
Move on. Right. Exactly.
All right. I'll move on to the next, speaking of moving on, move on to the next question. Let's talk about that glass ceiling concept. I know a lot of you have already addressed some of that in your past questions, but do you feel in your view that you faced career blocks regarding being a woman, you know, the tied to being a woman? And if so, again, some of you already addressed this, but did your role as a mom kind of impact that glass ceiling feeling? Let's start with you, Mrs. Haverchick.
Sure. So, you know, I think early on, predominantly being in a female industry as a nurse, I didn't see as many of those challenges early on. But as I shifted into a more administrative role, there were definitely times that I felt the glass ceiling. You know, I think we've come such a far way as females and have advanced. We have a seat at the table. We still definitely have some work to do in some of our diverse populations and making sure that that equity is there with the glass ceiling. I can remember, you know, specifically, there were 2 times I was passed up for a chief operating officer role. During that time, again, my kids were little, and unfortunately, I did go through a divorce when they were younger. So I think people just kind of looked, well, she's very busy. She has 2 young children. She's a single mom. How is she going to be able to do all these things and put in the work effort that's needed? And I had 2 options at that point. I could really let the frustration get the best of me. I could have left the organization, but I decided to embrace other opportunities while I was still here. And I helped that really was a catalyst to help me work harder and work in a different way. I continued to have my children as a focus, but also my career as a focus. And yes, they were not in perfect balance all the time, but I think that's really those extra projects that I did and really taking my work to a different level and reflecting on how I could improve is really what positioned me in the place that I am today. And I'm very cognizant of that. As I look to my mentors and as I mentor others, it's important that people understand those failures and those times that you don't get things are really those driving, motivating forces that help us be successful in the end. And you can never, ever be scared to fail. It's that point. It's really, I always call it that sweet spot, but that's the point where we really grow. So
taking those risks and the sleeps. And, you know, I was thinking of all the different positions you had in your career within that organization. They probably prepared you even better for the position you're in right now because you got to experience and see a lot more.
They absolutely have. Yes.
Mrs. Smith, do you want to have a take on the whole glass ceiling concept? What's your experiences?
Sure. So I've been in all male dominated industries. So for me, it's a little bit different because I feel as if I've had to fight that mentality. Corporations by and large, you know, were made for men, you know, by men for men. So for us to fight for that seat at the table, sometimes it's interesting. There's an interesting dichotomy, I think, when you break it down, because on one point we have to hire the women at the ground level to coach, develop, and lead them up. so that they can take those positions at the top, so they can become the VPs, the SVPs, the CEOs, the presidents of organizations. So it starts really with that effort to truly reach out to women, to people of color, to outreach. So making sure that they understand that they have a place in your organization. I think that's really key. And then I think there's the other piece of that women ourselves create, because we're so fierce and fiercely competitive, trying to get our seat at the table, that sometimes we don't make room for another woman. So there's two interesting, I think, things at play when we talk about just breaking that glass ceiling. And my philosophy and my approach has always been to lift up other women, because I think when women support women, so much more positive happens. And when we can lean on each other for that type of help and advice, because we know what it's like to be there. And oftentimes, I have a male mentor, I also have a female mentor for the reason that I need both perspectives. So for me, in trying to break through that glass ceiling myself, and a lot of my even career focus has shifted due to the pandemic. I think that's something that it's shown us. And so the interesting thing about the pandemic is, while there were 3 million women that left the workforce, companies are actually waking up and saying, we need more women, we need women, we need that perspective. And so now, as things are starting to shift back in a different direction, you see corporations opening up and saying, we want you. And there's groups like Hey Mama and the Mom Project that are geared towards finding jobs for women who want to work and re-enter the workforce. So I'm a huge fan of advocating for women. And I think the more that we can do so on a corporate level is only for the betterment of those organizations.
Thank you. And I see all kinds of great questions coming in into the chat box, and we're going to get to them. Dr. Hefazula, do you have comments on this glass ceiling challenge?
Absolutely. So very much in line with Maria and Heather. I've spent most of my career now advocating for women in medicine, and that really led me down the path to serve as national president of the American Medical Women's Association. And not only building that sisterhood to ensure that we have more folks at the table, to ensure that we now can put more meaningful muscle into some of our actions, but we're also calling for accountability and transparency, not just only within one institution or within one environment. So yes, I'm in the healthcare field, which is very much male dominated and continued to be so for a long period of time, but we're now ensuring that we have creative strategies that we're folding in, so that yes, while we're a sisterhood of leaders, we're also engaging to ensure that men who are in positions of power become sponsors as well. And they become an ally in the process of ensuring that we achieve equity in all realms. And so for me, being a mother actually made me a better leader. It made me a better doctor. It made me just better at what I was doing. And I felt that there was such great synergy in that role, because my perspective, my lens just opened up completely. You also are more resilient. You are able to multitask and see new creative solutions in some ways. There was actually a study that came out looking at women in medicine compared to men and how the outcomes played out for patients. And women physicians actually did very well and surpassed the mark. So I'm just, from the perspective of not just ensuring equity, but making sure that we are now able to give back because we are in a position to do so. I think that's a very important piece. We faced struggles early on, and we want to make sure that that path forward is going to be a little bit more clear. But just to echo my colleagues, those failures and those obstacles are definitely opportunities for refinement. They had to happen in order to kind of push us in the direction that we're in now, and to be able to achieve, other tiers that maybe we never even saw coming. While life is messy, that's the beauty of it all. Embrace it, and your perspective and your reaction to things, that's completely up to you.
One thing you said just really resonated with me is the fact that being a mother, made you a better professional. I always said, once you've learned to negotiate with like a 3-year-old, you can negotiate with anybody. Dr. Ramike, do you have some thoughts on this subject?
Yeah, and I think my panelists from their perspective, and like I think it was Heather was saying, like the field that she was in was predominantly female. My career too has been mostly in predominantly female-led in nonprofit organizations. But when we look at who is leading a lot of the nonprofit organization, the majority are white females. So my when it came to that, looking at that, it wasn't about the gender so much that provided the career block, but it was sometimes race. And I just remember being at an organization where I was in middle management, and the executive director was leaving, and she was a white female, and she actually approached me and said, encouraged me to apply for her position because she felt that I was the best kind of internal candidate for that position. And I did. And it came down to 3 candidates, and I was the only person of color. Unfortunately, I did not get the position. I was kind of down at that fork in the road place I told you guys before, whether I just get bitter again. But, I did not. I had a mentor. I think Maria was saying that's very important. I had a mentor who spoke to me, and what she said, I really wasn't expecting. She was saying that, Sharetta, don't take it personal, because when you look at the nonprofit industry, a lot of times people of color are not at the leadership because a lot of them are really, and I hate to say it this way, dependent on philanthropic efforts. And sometimes that they don't feel that people of color are really strong to bring in those efforts. So I did take that and I embraced that. And what I did was educate myself on how to be more philanthropic and how to work in the place that I am. And I also realized that, I don't need to sit at the CEO or the executive director level to make an impact and to make a difference. So I work really hard at seeing where need is and where I can serve people. And that's what I've been doing. When it comes to, the blocks and working with having kids, as you know, as the panel know, my kids are adults now. I actually became a mom unintentionally as a sophomore at the University of Florida as a teen, 19. And what that did was when my son was born, there was a lot of non-negotiables that happened at that time. I continued my degree. He was 2 when I walked across the stage. I still see him with his Mickey Mouse sweater on. He's 34 now, married with my granddaughter. So he hates when I tell that story. But anyway, it's just like it was some non-negotiables that were decided at that time, whether I was in school or whether I was working in my career. And that was that I would not leave my son, and eventually it'll be my daughter as well, home at night without me at the dinner table. We came around the dinner table every night to talk. They would not have a game or a recital or anything and not see me in the stands on the sideline. That was non-negotiables. So a lot of times I think I was blocked from going to getting other positions because of maybe the time requirements for advancement that were needed. But I set non-negotiables, and I found other ways to get career satisfaction than just about getting higher positions.
Oh my gosh, I just admire you and applaud you, because that's a huge feat in and of itself. Just making sure you don't miss the games and you're at the dinner table with them. Yes. I'm going to go on to the next question. And I think for this one, I'm just going to go to one of our panelists so that we can cover a few more topics. The next question is something we've heard a little bit about already, work-life balance. There was some controversy recently over the book a little bit ago, Lean In, Women, Work, and the Will to Lead, by Nell Scoville and Sheryl Sandberg. I want to ask you, Mrs. Smith, about the concept of lean in and that work-life balance.
Yeah, so listen, I love the concept of leaning in. And initially, I am someone who I'm a huge supporter of the lean in movement and leaning into your career and really finding the male advocates to lean into your career as well, to support your career journey and your career path. And I know in some of our prior discussions, what came out was actually, I'm at a point in my career where I'm actually leaning out. I think sometimes we can become so focused, and that's actually where, when you think about the lean in movement, it's all about career trajectory upwards. And it doesn't really focus on some of the aspects of your career that says, I just want to be a good mother and have a good solid career and thrive in that environment. I don't necessarily have to always be pushing upwards and always searching to break that glass ceiling. Maybe I don't want a seat at the table as CEO or as president. I just want to have a thriving career. And so I actually shared a resource that a friend of mine had written called Leaning Out. And it's basically the idea, it's the concept that if our life's work is supposed to be our legacy, then if we're not in a career or a field and our passion for what we're doing every day, meaning i.e. we're making money on that, isn't the source of our legacy, well, then we're going to work this entire career. And when we retire, what we're going to have is what we call the leftovers. And that's going to be the leftover time that we're going to have to do what fills our cup, what we're passionate about. So I think in certain examples here, we have two women who their life's legacy is their work, you know, and so that's great. In my corporate career, it's a means to an end. You know, it's something that I know that I have made a great career out of, and I've been able to provide for my family. But my passion really now is creating and developing something with my daughter, running my own company, building out a consulting agency where I can do something that will supersede my corporate career. So I think there's just an interesting dynamic there with Lean Out. I absolutely support the movement because I think we need to lean into women and into their careers and their passions. But I also think that there is a part, or I guess for the modern corporate woman, sometimes the dynamic is changing, and it's not just necessarily about entering the corporate world to shoot all the way up to being the CEO.
Excellent. There's so many more questions I want to get to, but we want to also have time for Q&A. I'm going to ask, I want to ask this question about mental and emotional health. This past year has brought about some serious challenges in terms of mental and emotional health for kids, for parents, for seniors, and then, sometimes the increasingly angry society. I would like to try to keep your comments brief because we want to go on to as many topics as possible, but what are your observations about the state of mental emotional health of our kids and our families who balance so much? Dr. Ramiki, I would love to hear from you.
Sure. And what I say about that, Rhonda, is that none of us have been immune to what's going on in today's society. So what I do, and it has put a lot of stress on all of us and our mental and emotional well-being. So what I do is make sure I party every day. And party is actually an acronym. So I'm going to share that with you. And you got to party every day. You got, the P means to pause. You have to stop. Just stop. Whatever's going on, just give yourself a minute, regroup, stop listening to the voices that are in your thoughts. A is for affirmation. I make sure that I have words, encouraging words around me all the time in my sight, in my hearing. I create constructive habits, and I also do good deeds, because that's the affirmation. R is remember your victories. Think about the things that I have been able to accomplish. I rediscover my lost passion. I'm trying to remember those victories. T, I try to think positively. Every day, I'm just focusing and being intentional of what I'm bringing into my thought life. And Y is to yield to hope. I feel if we can create a spark of hope, then there is always an opportunity to make a positive impact. So I'm intentional about partying every day because I have to do me before I can do more.
I love that. I love that. Anybody else on the panel want to talk about our state of emotional mental health? It'll be hard to top Dr. Ramike's answer.
That was an amazing answer. So just to add to that, since you covered so much ground with party, I love it. Absolutely, the mental health, and the stress, the anxiety levels of everyone around us has certainly been at an all-time high. And I know just being in the healthcare industry as well, many of my physician colleagues, friends, all of us, we've had a really tough time during this pandemic. We know suicide rates have been on the rise, and our children in particular, with them being cut off from social groups and having to really sort of live in a bubble for a longer period of time, it really affected their development in ways that will have some lasting impact. So some of the things that I recommend, we are blessed to live right here in Florida, where we have weather. Even spending just a few minutes outdoors in the sun, taking a walk with your family, embracing these moments that we have together. I have all 6 of us in the house together. Who knows when that will happen again? My older 2 are off in one's going to her master's and the other one's going off to college, and the other 2 are still in high school and lower school. And then my husband here, and we have a dog. But at the same time, those moments sort of bring us back. During this pandemic, if you have that time to be with your family and you're now able to engage in board games and spend that time together, reach out. My advice is to reach out to those who love and care about. And if you can't directly be with them physically, reach out, have a Zoom date, have a Zoom event, have something else that will allow you to connect and maintain that emotional support and connection. And of course, our food source, our nutrition, how well we take care of ourselves, of course, is an important piece. And of course, we have resources available. So I want to make sure that everybody taps in. CDC has a very good piece on mental health and stress. So if you were to just Google the CDC website resources, you will get a really nice list of items in your own area that can really help.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Hafizullah. Okay, we have we're going to do one last question, and I want to keep it kind of a speed round so we can get to some of these topics in chat. What's the best career advice anyone ever gave you, or that you would like to share with our audience today? Let's see. Let's go to Heather Haverchek first.
Thank you. So I think I already touched on this, but I would have to say the best career advice I ever have gotten, and I continue to use it with others, is not being scared to fail and really just jumping in even when you're not ready for that exact role, you're not ready for that opportunity, just embrace it. Don't be scared to fail and go at it wholeheartedly. And really, you have to love what you're doing each and every day for that passion to shine through. So I think that's really been the most beneficial advice that I've ever gotten, and I take with me every day.
Ms. Smith, what would be yours?
Yes, mine would be that I cannot be everything to everyone. And I think that the other piece of that is that how I show up at work is how I have to be at home, and vice versa. So I think oftentimes, especially as young moms, and I've learned this over time. So I'll say that speaking to Heather's just previous comment, I learned this through failing and trying to be two different people, trying to be someone and something to my company that I wasn't at home, and really trying to separate the two. And the more that I did that, the more I found just such a dissonance and disconnection in both areas of my life. And so when they came together harmoniously, and I was the same as I was at home as who I am at work, and those started to present themselves in that way, everything came together from a career perspective. And I ended up enjoying both aspects of my life even more, and the passion for both really grew together. So that would be my biggest piece of advice, is definitely don't try to be everything to everyone, and be who you are, because being your authentic self in every aspect that you're in is where you're going to feel the most comfortable.
I was going to use that exact word. It's authenticity and being authentic. Okay. Dr. Ramiki, your sage advice.
That's my one sentence. I'm one decision away from a different life, so decide wisely. That was the best advice. And that's what put me always at that fork.
Nice.
Knowing that. Mm-hmm.
Nice. And Dr. Hafizullah, your career advice or life advice?
Absolutely. I would just say, let passion be your compass in life. You're leading with your heart in all that you do. Make sure that compassion and empathy for all of the folks around you that you're so honored to take care of in one way or another, that remains at the forefront. And I would also very quickly say that there is no one size fits all approach. And we want to make sure that we embrace our own set of passions and priorities in that moment of time to be able to move in a direction that speaks to us.
Kind of sometimes listen to sometimes the universe guides you, and you have to remain open and flexible to hear that guidance. Sometimes if you remain closed, you may miss some really great signals that could lead you. Okay, I'm going to get to some of these wonderful questions in the chat box. And Stacy and Elizabeth, if you send some direct ones to me that I may have missed, but let's start off with this one. How did you manage venturing into business and maintaining your closest relationships, i.e. your marriage or your life partner? Let's see, Dr. Hafizullah, would you like to?
Absolutely. So great question. I love that question. So I decided, after being in practice with my husband for about 5 years, that I wanted to open my own concierge hybrid internal medicine practice. So knowing that that was me sort of jumping off the cliff into a new venture and creating a new model of medicine that did not exist at the time, and using telemedicine at the time when it was not something that was mandated or even the norm. This was back in 2008. So I had extensive conversations with my husband, with my family, everybody around me. I'll tell you, my husband was my biggest cheerleader in that moment of time. But after creating that business plan and jumping into it, and yes, I had many naysayers, most folks who said, no, it's going to be tough for you. It's, not something that you've done. You don't really have a business background, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, well, that gave me more motivation to just continue to move forward. And, it's still very much successful today. And it allowed me to balance work and family in ways that my children saw that I was finding creative solutions to continue my career. And knowing that my career, having that on board, really injected new life into me being a mother, it really was a great synergy. I ended up overlapping my worlds and making sure that I viewed my life as a Venn diagram so that, my children were always a part of the journey. They were either there present, sometimes in the office setting, and when we had big events, they were part of it. Some of them got service hours if they volunteered, in different areas. So there are ways to not compartmentalize your world and to make sure that they overlap so that you can create that balance at the same time, communicate clearly.
Anybody else on the panel want to talk to our audience about, how, I know sometimes like when the kids come along, sometimes the spouse gets neglected, and anybody else want to take on this topic of how to keep the relationship of your partner alive while family and business and everything's being juggled?
Yeah, I'll go. Communication. I think communication in anything is key. I mean, it's key in a business relationship. It's key in a marriage. And I'm a huge advocate of dating your spouse. Listen, I'm the first to say that I have failed in this aspect. So I have take it from me in saying that when you don't nurture, a marriage, it can't thrive. I have a thriving marriage now because we have worked to get to that point and we have put that focus. But as I'd mentioned earlier, there was a point in my career where I absolutely, sacrificed my family for my career. And so when that happens, then things start to fall apart. And so ultimately at the end of the day, it's all driven by communication.
Excellent. Thank you for your honesty. I'm going to try to get to this next question. Somebody put in the chat, as a new career mom, I feel guilty about spending money on things like hiring somebody to clean the house or putting my child in daycare since I can work from home and take care of her. Any tips on getting rid of that guilt and justifying paying $7,000 a year on daycare? Let's see, Dr. Havacek, do you have an opinion on this?
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll take that one. So take that guilt away, because you can't, I think we've all told you today, you can't be everything to everyone. So if you want to prioritize having time to spend with your child on a Saturday and not cleaning the house for 5 hours, that money is so well spent that helps you reprioritize that time that you have. Even if you're working from home, it's just going to be too overwhelming where you're putting too much pressure on yourself to also be that super mom at the same time. So, children thrive when they're with other children. There's nothing wrong with going to daycare. There's nothing wrong with having a babysitter and having that extra help. You have to build your tribe, and that tribe is going to help you thrive. So don't feel bad about that. I know as a new mom, it's easy to feel guilty that you're leaving the kids or having someone do what traditionally maybe we were supposed to do, but there's nothing you're supposed to do. You kind of create your destiny and what your roadmap looks like. Take that pressure off yourself.
Awesome, Heather. Thank you, Mrs. Havacek. Thank you. Okay, let's see. Somebody put in there, and this is interesting to hear what people have to say. This, do you have any regrets? And if so, what they may be? Dr. Ramiki, sorry.
No problem. Any regrets? I think the only regret I would have is that I didn't speak up more, use my voice earlier on in my career. I used to sit in meetings and listen to people talk about certain communities and how they are thriving or not thriving, or the way they describe. And a lot of times those communities are the way I come from or where I live, and I wouldn't say anything. I would not speak up. So I think that regret, like early in my career, not actively using my voice to really move forth what I was passionate about. So, but I use it now. You can ask people I talk. I talk about it now because, I just want to make sure that everybody is equitable, everybody's happy, everybody's healthy, and everybody's safe. So if I say a regret, it would be like not using my voice early on in my career.
Excellent, excellent. Anyone else would like to talk about any regrets or lack thereof?
I try not to live with any regrets. I think everything happened for a good reason. It meant to teach you a lesson. And, you know, Dr. Ramiki, I used to be the shyest person on the face of the earth. And now, you know, you cannot get me to stop talking. So I tell you, those moments of quiet where you were kind of viewing into a situation, you know, it really helped me in that sense to sort of realize this is not the life I wanted. I wanted to make sure that I was more engaged and a part of this picture in front of me. I didn't want to be off to the side. I wanted to very much be a part of that plan. And so those active talks with myself during that time really pushed me out of my comfort zone. And I am grateful to many supporters and mentors who have had along the way who really helped to reinforce that. And it brought me up to who I am today. So, you know, in that sense, don't live with regrets. Everything happens for a good reason. I do firmly that. But at the same time, never get complacent and always do your best, do the right thing.
So thank you, Dr. Hapazula. Thank you. So I probably just have time for this last question, and that a couple of people have asked, like either how did you go about finding a mentor, or if any of you guys are accepting mentors. Anybody have it? But Maria, you talked about mentorships. How did you go about like finding your mentor?
Sure. So one of my mentors just happened to, over the years, turned into a mentor. Really, it was just a situation where I was hired into an organization, and that the person who hired me in kind of kept ascending to different roles, and each time I just found myself leaning on this person for advice, and in career and in life. And then, you know, my other mentor I sought out. So I will say this: I say I have two mentors. I also have a mentor that I've never met, and it's Sarah Blakely, who is the CEO of Spanx. So your mentors don't have to be people that you've met either. So I think that's the other thing too. I've learned so much from her. I literally joined masterclass for her just to watch her masterclass, and now I've since branched out and watched others, and have learned so much from that as well. So I think there's just a lot to be learned from other people, and if they're willing to give up their time and energy and effort, absolutely. I've been a part of my mentor program at my work, both as a mentee and a mentor, and it's invaluable. Being a part of programs like that. So if there's anyone who ever wants any type of mentorship, I'm game.
I'm sure that what we can do is there's a way to get in contact with either Stacy or Elizabeth at March of Dimes, and we could maybe filter in and people if there's potential for that. Let's see, Stacy, I want to turn it over to you. I mean, I could ask questions to you guys all day long because I think you're filled with so much wisdom, and just really enjoy talking with you. And you know what it reminded me is just never stop learning. You know, no matter, we can keep learning as long as we're walking on this earth. So thank you for allowing me to moderate today, and I'll turn it back over to Stacy.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much. We really appreciate all that information. And I think no matter where you are at your career, that you can learn from what was heard today. So thank you, ladies, so much. Darren, we could go back to the PowerPoint real quick. So if you'd like to learn more about the March of Dimes, I absolutely invite you to go to our website at marchofdimes.org. If you're interested in volunteering or getting involved, you can reach out to myself. And if you're interested to make a donation in support of the NSU March for Babies team, you can visit this page as their March for Babies team as well. So again, we thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to NSU, and thank you to Darren, who is our behind the scenes guru. We hope you walked away with some great advice that will help you build your powerhouse life and career. And again, happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there. Thank you all so much.
Happy Mother's Day to you all. And you'll see that Elizabeth put her email in the chat box. So any people in our audience who are interested in getting a mentor, I think you could reach out to Elizabeth. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Stacy. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Darren. Thank you, panelists. And I second Stacy. Have a happy Mother's Day.